Welcome to Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. I'm Julia Elliott-Brown, the founder and CEO of Enter the Arena. I'm a serial entrepreneur and an expert in raising investment and business growth. Our mission at Enter the Arena is to empower female founders to fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business with investment expertise and business coaching. Here we share the stories of inspirational female founders who've raised investment to inspire you to do the same. You'll hear their honest accounts of what it was really like to secure funding, the highs, the lows, and the challenges they experienced on the journey. And along the way, we'll discuss top tips for how you can be successful too. Today I'm speaking with Julianne Ponan, the Managing Director of Free-From food brand Creative Nature. Creative Nature supplies raw superfoods, snacks and food mixes suitable for everyone, including those who are nutrition conscious, vegetarians, vegans, and those who live with food allergy or intolerance. Now, Julianne, in her own words, is allergic to everything, and her personal experience has been a huge motivation in creating the vision for Creative Nature. Julianne did a degree in accounting and investment management and then started her career working in banking for a while. But in 2012, her father, a businessman, asked her to do some due diligence on a business that he just invested in called Creative Nature. And there began the start of Julianne's entrepreneurial journey. Today, Creative Nature's products can be found in supermarkets and retail outlets, including Tesco's, the Co-op, Sainsbury's, Asda, Natural Kitchen, TK Maxx, and products are exported to 12 countries, including Iceland, Switzerland, and Jordan. Turnover for 2020 is projected at 2 million. She's come a long way. So what about funding? Well, after turning down investment from Deborah Meaden on Dragon's Den in 2017, which we'll hear more about later, the following year, Julianne raised £500,000 through crowdfunding, with over 400 investors coming on board and a valuation of 5.5 million. So let's meet Julianne and hear all about her fundraising story. So welcome to the show, Julianne. So tell us more about how this whole thing started, the story of how you became involved in Creative Nature and turned this into a very different business than the one that your father originally invested in.
Yeah, so pretty much I was working in Beijing in investment banking before that, and I spent around a year out there, then came back, and my father asked me to do some due diligence on a company that he had put money into. At the time, the company was doing loads and loads of different things like candles, incense, Buddha statues. They were selling at like small festivals, etc. They had pumpkin oil, lots of different things. Anyway, I looked at the company and I told him instantly, you've lost that money that you've put in because the company itself is not doing well. It's in over £56,000 losses right now, and it's got losses from previous years too. So it's not going to go anywhere. He asked my suggestion of what to do, and I said maybe a management buyout from the people currently working for the company. And he said, yeah, I could do that. He's like, but what about you? Would you ever want to do a management buyout and take on the company? And I said, not really, because I don't really have an interest in that anyway. But it sort of played on my mind, and I've always wanted to have something that was my own, and kind of like made a difference in a way, because I always wanted to be remembered as well. So Creative Nature was born in a way as a free-from brand because I suffer from anaphylaxis. So I'm allergic to, like you said, everything, all tree nuts, peanuts, sesame, chickpeas, lentils. And I always felt like I was missing out. So I was that allergy kid that had to sit on my own table, because at the time in schools, they still allowed you to bring in peanut butter and things like that. So what they did was just segregate the allergy children. And unfortunately, I was the only one in my year, which wasn't the greatest. There obviously is a huge increase in allergies now, and they really do try and cater for people. with allergies. So anyway, I saw that there was a huge gap in the market, especially for food on the go and snacking. Like 90% of snack bars that are healthy out there contain nuts. So I couldn't eat any of them. So started literally in my kitchen making snacks. We went out to Kingston High Street. We sampled. It was a crazy time because sampling at the first, people like spat out the bars, didn't like them at all. So, I mean, it wasn't the easiest to take that feedback, but we rendered the recipes again and again and again until we got to the right taste and also price point as well.
Wow, so you totally turned this into a completely different business. And so when you started doing that, I mean, did you have a budget to play with when you were getting the product developed and all that kind of stuff? Did you put your own money into it? How did you do the funding at the start?
It was literally all my own savings because the business itself, it didn't have a lot of cash. I also got rid of the whole management team. So I was literally sitting in the office all by myself. It was a tiny office and that was it. And then not long into my journey, I asked my partner now, who was a primary school teacher at the time, I asked him to quit his job and come and work for Creative Nature. I sold him the vision that we were going to be in all the supermarkets and it was going to be really fun and it'd be great to work together. And yeah, he came on board and we started from there really, developing products, getting rid of all the other products as well, because that was hard too, because obviously there was a stash of so many things, random things that we just had to bin and sort through really.
Wow. So you started to develop these products and you were doing it all with your own savings and then the business started to take off a little bit, didn't it, when you secured a distribution deal with Tesco's?
Yes, so I mean, the business itself, first of all, it was selling into sort of small independent health stores, getting people to take risks and stock products, sale or return. And actually, it was at the point just before Tesco's, actually, I went and tried to get investment. And I went out to everyone I knew. I came from banking as well. I came from finance, so I did know some great people. However, I got turned down by all of them. I tried to do a crowdfunding round publicly and failed.
Oh, I didn't know that. Gosh.
Yeah, so that was hard to take. I got called a little girl on the forum as well, on the public forum, told that I would never launch into a supermarket. It was just too people.
So before we move on, I mean, what happened there then? So why did people say no, and why did your crowdfunding campaign fail, do you think, looking back?
Well, I'd never run a crowdfunding campaign to begin with, so I didn't really know what to do. I think the fact that I didn't have a full marketing plan in place didn't help things. There's loads of different things that play into a crowdfunding campaign. It's not just sort of put it up on the website and yay, we're funded. That's just not how it works. It takes about 6 to 8 months prior getting ready for it. And drumming up some of your own investment. I didn't realise that I had to do that. So when I launched on the platform, I didn't have any investment lined up either. So the momentum wasn't there. So I do suggest if you ever do crowdfunding, you do have a certain amount coming in, or at least pledged towards your campaign.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the rule of thumb I used to go with was a third, but actually now my advice to people is always, to almost be 100% funded before you go live.
Yeah,
so,
we said a third as well when we did it the second time.
I think definitely once you've got over 50% funded before you go live, that helps. But if you're sort of more than 75%, that makes a big difference. Yeah. I think that mistake that you made is a really, really common one if you haven't got experience in it. So that's something for people to think about, isn't it?
And the video as well. We didn't do the video well. We didn't have the budget to do it. Obviously, that's why we were funding. But you do need to make sure certain things come across really authentic and are done to a professional level at the same time.
But how did you deal with those setbacks, Julianne? I mean, it's it's hard, isn't it, when you fail at crowdfunding because it's a very public failure? How did you deal with it?
It was really difficult. That's when I kind of wanted to throw in the towel, and I said, I've had enough. I don't think this is for me. I can't take it any further. But Matt had said to me, think about why you started this in the first place. And that was the key driver, the mission, the ethos. Why were we doing Creative Nature? And it was to help other people like me who suffer from allergies. And had I done that? No, not really, not on the scale I wanted to do. So we came up with a plan to how to get the business to the next level without funding. And that was really tough, because it was going, okay, we're actually just not going to bother to try and fund. We're going to grow this organically, and we're going to do it all through profit. Okay. Which was difficult. We're going to launch ourselves into a supermarket. We're going to get a national listing. All of these things we said, and we went out there and we tried to do it.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and I think that's good, something for people to think about too, because I think often entrepreneurs immediately jump to this idea of I must raise funding because you read about it in the press. But the alternative way, as you looked at, was actually, let's see how we can build this business by just selling products and making profit without necessarily taking on funding, right?
Yeah, and which meant it was kind of a blessing in disguise in a way, because when you first start out, the valuation will obviously be a lot lower. But once you've got a proven concept in the market, you're selling and you're profitable, your valuation goes up and more investors are actually more inclined to want to invest. So for me personally, yes, maybe we didn't get the funding from the first round, but it actually put us in a much stronger position later on. Now we retained much more equity, whereas I know a lot of startup businesses that own sometimes under 30% of their business, which is kind of scary, because later on, say they want to grow even further, they've then got to part with more and more equity, and eventually they could end up with hardly anything.
Yeah, it's a really sad story. And I think if you focus on what it is you're trying to achieve, as you did very cleverly with Matt, looking at what's the vision here, what are you doing this for, and you're trying to build a brand that makes a difference, and you're trying to build a business that generates long-term value for yourself. So if you give away too much equity too soon, then you're not going to achieve that.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So interesting. So you've got the deal with Tesco's. Things are starting to really move. You're working flat out, all that kind of stuff. So did you then get to a point where you thought, actually, maybe now we do need investment?
Well, we carried on for a while, and we launched into Sainsbury's. We were just about to launch into Sainsbury's and Co-op, and I had just done the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business course, and that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, where you're put on a cohort that has 40 other businesses on, and they range from sort of $1 million turnover up to like 50 million turnover, and you really learn from each other. And that's when I started to think about investment again. They taught us not to be scared of investment, and not to be scared of growth, which I obviously, because of what happened in the past, I was quite scared of taking on investment, whether it be debt financing or crowdfunding or a VC, whatever funding it was. I was still quite apprehensive about it, but that changed my mind on how to get investment, firstly, because they showed us many different routes. Then I decided, okay, right, I'm going to try Dragon's Den. And the reason why we tried Dragon's Den was because they had asked us to go on actually quite a few times before, and we had turned it down. But this time when they asked us, we said yes, mainly because we didn't have a marketing budget. And also we were looking at the investment piece. So we thought, well, why not? It makes sense because we're launching into Co-op and Sainsbury's. It will be a great way of people seeing the product straight away. But also we can get the Dragon's feedback and also potential investment if it if it's the right valuation for us. So yeah, that's why we chose to go on there, and it was definitely new to me, and very exciting time.
But you turned, so Deborah came in and made you an offer, which you turned
Yes.
down. And now I think I'm right in saying that she offered you £75,000 for 25% of the business. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And then we negotiated down to the 20%.
Okay. So I can kind of imagine why you might not have taken that funding, but let me hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, we were never going to take that low evaluation, because we knew other businesses in the market were getting way higher valuation with like a quarter of our turnover and not in profit. So I did think that was just too low for us. However, it did give us the exposure we needed. And also, I think the reason why the valuation was slightly lower was because they didn't actually believe we were going into Sainsbury's and Co-op, because all we had was an email and we didn't have an actual purchase order. However, a week later from when we filmed, we got the orders through. So it just didn't make sense to us, business sense. It was one of the hardest things I had to do, though, was turn down that investment, because my dad and mum was like, take it, like, that's amazing. And I was like, no, I just don't think it's right.
Good for you. I mean, I think you're right. It is so hard to turn down funding, but actually, you know, at that valuation, you would have been giving too much away, and you know, you've got to hold fast sometimes, haven't you, on your gut feel on these things. Well done for doing that.
Sometimes, I mean, some people say to me it's better to have a tiny bit of something huge than a lot of nothing, which is true. But there's also all that work that you've put in, you do need to put a value on it as well.
That's right. And actually, given that you were securing such great retail deals, that must have been helping with your confidence in the business at that point too.
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic. Good for you. Okay, so you didn't take the funding. You got some great new retail deals. And obviously, I imagine you got some good impact from the exposure that show gave to you.
Yes.
But then you did decide again to go out for funding the following year, didn't you?
Yes, we decided pretty much straight after the Den that we were definitely going to go out to do crowdfunding. And I set myself a goal of sort of 9 months to get ready for it, because it does take a long time. And it was just me working on, like, I didn't have any help on that campaign in terms of like running that campaign or anything. I got advice from our non-execs, and that was fantastic. But at the end of the day, I had to sort of step back from the business and let Matt and the rest of the team handle the other side, to make sure I was focused on this funding round, and I was focused on meeting investors, getting them to understand the business before our campaign went live.
Yeah, and that's a big job, isn't it? And as we talked about earlier, a lot of people don't realise how much work is involved in getting the kind of momentum before you even launch. So tell us more about the kind of investors that you got on board before you went live with crowdfunding. How did you find them? How did you carry out your meetings with them, all that stuff?
Mainly through networking, introduction. So obviously I had all the Goldman Sachs network that I've built up. They all actually invested as well, like they pledged. You just never know if they're 100% until you press go and then you see all the investment come in. But yes, they majority of them agreed to put a certain amount of funding in, which really, really helped. Then they introduced me to more investors. I was also introduced by our non-exec, Paul Edwards, who has worked with companies like JKR. He introduced me to this network called Couplepreneurs, which was really interesting. And we went to a dinner, and I actually met Chris and Julie there. So that was really exciting. And they said that they had done a crowdfunding round and it worked quite successfully.
This is Chris Julie from Cheeky
Cheeky
Panda,
Panda, yes, yeah.
who
And
did a podcast interview with last year, actually. Really, really interesting. If anyone wants to have a listen to that. Yeah, another couplepreneur.
yeah, and actually some of their investors are now some of ours,
Right.
because again, it was through networking, and Chris introduced me to some of his, and they really liked the idea of the business and where we were going and how the free from market was growing. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So networking, a really important part of your strategy. And what sort of networking did you do? Obviously, you've got lots of meetings with people who introduced you to other people. Did you also go to networking events as well?
Not as much. I found they didn't work as much for me personally. I found it was more where you're involved with other businesses. Like the Goldman Sachs cohort was fantastic. The couplepreneurs was great as well. So that was a networking event technically, but I was introduced via someone else. And I do think it's important to get that referral to know whether it's worth it for you to go or not. If you are going to a networking event, I suggest you scope out who's going prior. So you make a list, you look those people up on LinkedIn, you understand whether they would be interested in speaking with you, and you have like an elevator pitch that you constantly have with you, because people don't really have time. So explaining your business to them in 30 seconds, 1 minute, it's going to help you so much, because you never know who you're going to meet on a train, on a plane. And you literally have 30 seconds and you've got to capture them in that.
Brilliant advice. So, and I think what I would take from that is that I think some people think that networking means you have to go to these kind of big events and go and approach people that you've never met before. And it's not necessarily about that, is it? It's about working your network and finding introductions and meeting people that you think will be relevant.
Yeah, and connecting on LinkedIn, because it really is as simple as that sometimes. Sending people a note.
Yeah, LinkedIn is an extremely powerful tool on that perspective. And also, you mentioned about getting referrals. If you see somebody you think might be interested on LinkedIn, there's usually a way to find them, isn't there? Through people that you know, which is always a great way to be introduced. Okay, fantastic. So before you went live, do you remember how much of your funding you had committed?
It was around so we put our target at 350,000, and we had around 250,000 already, like pledge. Okay. But it wasn't guaranteed. It was people saying yes, and there were people that dropped out. So I do think people need to make sure they've got an extra buffer in there, that they just have on the side, just in case, because some people will say, yeah, I will definitely be putting in 100,000, and that's a lot of money. And then if you suddenly have that one person pull out, you don't have any backup. So you're just making sure that you've constantly got that understanding, because it might be they just don't have those funds to play with at that time, and it's not liquid for them.
I mean, I think a good rule of thumb these days, and these stats are changing all the time, but these days, when you've kind of got a list of all the pre-pledges and you work out, what you think you've got secured in advance, it's actually often wise to just count on maybe 20% of that, which sounds really low.
It does.
But actually, the experience from the major crowdfunding platforms is that that's what happens on average. And I think most entrepreneurs, again, would be quite surprised at that stat. They think, I've had so many people say they're going to invest. I think I'm definitely going to fund this campaign.
Yeah.
As you say, you can't necessarily count on people. Stuff happens. Their money becomes illiquid. They change their mind. You can never really, 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 really count on it.
Until you go live.
Until you go live and you start to see what they do. So that's also worth bearing in mind. Okay. And I know something you'd mentioned before to me was around paperwork on investment, which can be quite intensive, can't it?
It can. Luckily, we had a lot of the paperwork sorted from the Dragon's Den, so that was intense. It was, you literally had to have paperwork for any minor claim. So if you said, I don't know, for example, Sainsbury's had a meeting with you, you had to prove that there was an email, there was a date in the diary, and you got a confirmation from the buyer saying that you had a meeting. So that's the minute detail that they go into it. It's not just sort of top level, okay, this is how much equity you've got in the business, this is your turnover, this is your profit. It's a lot more in depth. So that geared us up to the crowdfunding raise, because anything we put on there had to be backed up. So for example, like the Great Taste Awards, we had to get all the certifications out. If you say you're BRCA standard, you've got to have the certification for it. But it's just a sort of a tick off process. And even though I had the Dragon's Den paperwork, I still had to do even more, because any little thing we said in the video, you had to back up. Including team members. So for example, we had one team member leave in the middle of before we went live, and that really caused an issue, because they were like, well, you can't actually include that team member because they're no longer part of the business. And we're like, well, we've just filmed this whole video, we can't cut them out. So we just had to put a disclaimer saying that the team, this was our current team. But something so minor, you have to have that information.
They're strict, but it's good, isn't it? I think, because the due diligence is so thorough that it gives that reassurance to investors. When I remember when I did my first crowdfunding campaign for a business, and you were to talk about the team thing, you know, and you could put things like which university you went to and the qualifications you had, and they were like, well, okay, well, we need to see your degree certificate and your MBA certificate. I'm like, okay, I think they might be in the loft at my mum's house. And I couldn't find them, and we had to take it all off of all my team. And it was really, really strict. But I think it's a good thing, you know.
I mean, it is good, because it means that it's transparent to the investors. It's just very difficult, and it's also difficult because you're putting your whole life and your business out there, your ideas, everything, and it's quite daunting, because first of all, you don't know whether people are going to like it, and secondly, a lot of people worry about the competition as well, because obviously competitors can go on the crowdfunding site, request your deck, and in a way steal your ideas, which is sad but true.
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons on it, and I think it's about being aware of those and making a judgment call as to whether it's right for you and your business, isn't it?
Exactly.
I was also going to ask you about the rewards on crowdfunding, because you know, you see some people putting rewards up as part of their campaign, and some people don't do it anymore. What was your experience with crowdfunding rewards? Did they work for you?
We put a few up, but I wish we had put different ones now, and I wished we had done more of like a subscription model or something where it was tailored towards the investors. Because now we get a lot of the investors ask us, oh, when you bring out new products, can you do a special like event for us or a code for us? And we haven't done that, and it would have been nice to have included that on the campaign itself.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it should be about using the rewards to both get investors to put in perhaps a little bit more than they were going to, but also, as you say, build them as brand ambassadors post-campaign.
That was key. That's why we did crowdfunding, because it wasn't just the fact that we could get a good valuation. It was the brand ambassadors. They're the ones that can help you sort of get your brand to the next level by going out there, buying it, spreading the word. We had over 400 investors, which is it's great. It's 400 more people around the country that could potentially go into store.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to, before we sort of end up, I want to just talk to you a little bit about some of your experience as a female founder, because I think you're a fantastic example of a woman who's leading a business, growing it fast, delivering some real results. But obviously you had some not very pleasant comments when you were going out for investment to start with, being called a little girl. What was your experience after that? Did you find it more challenging being a female founder, or did you find it didn't make a difference? What do you think?
I think sometimes it's good, and it's fantastic to see more female founders, and then sometimes it's not so good. So for example, still at trade shows I get asked, say if I'm with Matt, for example, they will want to speak to Matt rather than speak to me. Little things like that. It does annoy me sometimes, or they go, oh, he has to be the owner. You can't be. I even had someone literally laugh and point when saying that I couldn't be the owner, which isn't great. But saying that, there's such a buzz around female entrepreneurs now, and it is fantastic. But my only sort of gripe with it is, for example, if I go to a female event, I just find that it's too focused around women, and I want it to be equality, not just, I don't want to be just the best in that room, in the women's room. I want to be the best in both rooms with men and women. And I find it really difficult when I'm asked to do sort of female-led talks only. And I always go, well, yes, at the moment, yeah, my team is probably literally 90% female, but that's just the way it's happened. That's not to say that I wouldn't have men employed in my team, because they're absolutely fantastic and they bring such a different dimension to the team. So I think it's really important that we fight for equality and sort of growing together. And I'm more against having just female groups. I'm more about, come on, let's learn off each other.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if it's just women talking to women and we don't include men in the conversation, we're not going to make a difference anyway. So
no, we're not. And we need men to be backing female entrepreneurs. That's the point.
We do, because let's face it, there's some amazing female founders out there, including you, who are building some incredible businesses and delivering brilliant returns for investors. So it makes good business sense, doesn't it, for investors to be sitting up and taking notice.
It's still sad to hear about CEOs, though, that there's so little women CEOs in certain areas like law or banking. But I'm sure that this will change in the future.
Yeah. I mean, the stats on funding going to female founders, sadly, the dial is not moving. And it is a constant frustration for me, I have to say. Last 4 years, there really hasn't been much change in the UK, despite a huge buzz and despite a lot of initiatives to support female founders. The numbers are still not changing.
I still think there's a stigma about it. I still think there's still that reluctance that they need to sort of, I don't know, in a way educate the investors to come on board with, but it's just it's not working yet.
Very frustrating. Well, fingers crossed, again, more women listening to your podcast, hearing your story, will be inspired to go out there and the point you made at the beginning when you were talking about Goldman Sachs, about not being afraid to grow, not being afraid to take on investment to help you grow. I think that's a really big one for a lot of women, is to get over that initial kind of nervousness around it. So tell me, finally, what is next for Creative Nature? What are you going to be doing in the next kind of year or two?
Well, we've just launched our brand new product, Norbles, which is a top 14 free. It's like a Malteser, but a vegan one. And so that's just coming out. It's literally launching at the end of this month. So that's really, really exciting. And we're really ramping up export this year, and we hope to get into the US in the next 2 years.
Ooh, exciting. Huge market for you to go after.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think you're going to have to raise any more money?
Well, potentially, if for the US, yes, we will probably need to do another raise, but we hope to organically grow with the investment we have, and really gain market share in the UK and Europe.
Fantastic. Well, you're doing an amazing job. Congratulations on everything you've achieved so far, and we look forward to seeing your products being everywhere.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julianne. We'll speak to you soon. Take care. Thanks for following Fundraising Stories with Female Founders. This content is all provided to you for free, so if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe so you never miss another one. Enter the Arena has helped hundreds of female founders fly through pre-raise and investment and onto the exponential growth of their business. Our first-hand experience, expert guidance, and proven programs help female founders unleash the Wonder Woman inside. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.enterthearena.co.uk. I'm Julia Elliott Brown, and I look forward to talking with you soon.